Welcome back to C3 Yorks Online. Today we're looking at the issue of grief as part of our series, looking at questions Jesus asked. What do you do with heartache and the hurt that often follows deep disappointments? How do you find your way back to a place of joy and peace? All that coming up in just a moment with a message from one of our leadership team, Alex Pitcher.
Hi church, today we're continuing our series called Questions Jesus Asked, focusing not on the questions that we ask Jesus, but on the stories surrounding the questions that Jesus asked us. The question I want to talk about today is, why are you weeping? This is a question that Jesus asked, which is taken from the famous story of the resurrected Jesus appearing to Mary Magdalene outside his empty tomb on Easter Monday. It's a story that we usually tell at Easter and one that is rightly the cause of great joy and celebration. But I want to focus on the moments before the great joy and celebration of Jesus' resurrection. This is not so much about understanding what the Bible is saying, but about understanding how Mary Magdalene is feeling as she sits by Jesus' tomb. The Jewish people, despite being God's chosen ones, had an incredibly difficult history. They'd been exiled in Egypt, wandered for 40 years in the wilderness, seen themselves finally settled in the Promised Land, only to produce a string of flawed kings, resulting in enslavement by Babylon, release, and then finally occupation by the Roman Empire. Life was not good for them. It was a hard and tragic life, and not at all what God's chosen representatives had expected their life to be like. All these people had left was their hope. They believed in faith that one day someone, a Messiah, would come who would bring peace and harmony and put right all the injustice, evil, and corruption in the world. In this story, we meet Mary from Magdalene. She is someone who doesn't need to wait in anticipation for the anointed one who would make everything right. Jesus, has arrived in her own lifetime. Jesus cured Mary from being possessed by demons. She saw him perform miracles herself. She experienced those miracles. Mary travelled with Jesus just the same as the 12 disciples did, listening to his teaching, hearing him spread the good news about the kingdom of God. Mary knew Jesus. She knew he was the one. He was the anointed one. He was the Messiah. Jesus was the one who would set the world right. She followed him and she dedicated her whole life to him. But then she had to watch as he was beaten, tortured, and humiliated. She heard every hammer blow as nails were driven through his hands and feet into the wood of his cross. She was helpless as she watched him hanging on the cross, slowly dying. What Mary felt was complete heartbreak and despair. Everything she believed in, everything she built her hopes on, everything that she had committed her whole life to, just died. Her hopes and dreams for a better future, not just for her, but for the whole world, were ruined. This is tragic grief at its most intense. Sadly, we've all been Mary in that moment when your world falls apart. And this is not a message to tell you to get rid of all your baggage. This is a message to say, bring your baggage. It's okay. Bring your heartache and your hurt and your disappointment, and I'll bring mine. Bring the family member that you still miss. Bring the loved one that you lost. Bring the family that you didn't have. Bring the relationship that didn't work out. Bring the friendship that soured, never to be quite the same again. Bring the harsh words spoken to you that still leave a scar. Bring the exam grades you didn't get, the career you never quite had. Bring the hoped-for futures that never materialised. Bring your hardship. Bring your loneliness. Bring your disappointment. Bring your tears if you want to. It's okay. This is a safe place. Bring all your baggage with you to John chapter 20, verse 11, and join Mary in her tears by Jesus' empty tomb after finding his body missing. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she stooped to look into the tomb. And she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They've taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." What is Mary doing at the tomb? Why is she even there? Maybe she was bringing spices, as was the tradition, but maybe she's just there to cry. Maybe she's just there to be near Jesus' body, to be around him for just a little bit longer before she has to accept the crushing reality of what has just happened. Maybe she just doesn't know where else to go. Her world has fallen apart. Where's she supposed to go? I've been there when my world has fallen apart. I lost my dad 10 years ago this year. With no warning, and in just 2 short days, I found myself saying words to doctors that I'd never imagined saying, that they can turn the machines off. And I sat by his side as he passed. My wife, Hui, and I have suffered 3 miscarriages, something I've spoken about before. But these are 3 little lives that before they even set foot in the world, made themselves at home in my head. They're 3 little futures already imagined, and 3 little people that I loved just as much as the one little person that we do have. The one who runs and sings and shouts, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." So I know how it feels when your world falls apart. When you don't know what to do with yourself, and when you don't know where else to be. When you don't even know what matters anymore. You're not sure if anything will ever matter anymore. So you go and you sit at the tomb and you cry. You sit near the wreckage of your hopes and dreams and cry for the loss of the future that you'd imagined. Mary cried for Jesus, who had been taken away from her. "They've taken away my Lord," she said to the angels. Mary cried for the loss of the healed world that she was certain that Jesus was going to bring about. Everything that she hoped for or believed in was now just in ruins, and his body was gone. The story continues in John chapter 20, verse 14, as Jesus miraculously appears to Mary. Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned around and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and that he had said these things to her. The first thing that Jesus says to Mary is, "Why are you weeping?" He doesn't say, "There's no need to weep." He doesn't say, "Stop weeping." He asks why she is weeping. Jesus wants to know why you are crying. He wants you to know that it's going to be okay. He doesn't need you to stop crying. He just wants to soothe your pain, comfort you in your sadness, and help carry your grief. So what do you do when your world is falling apart? Firstly, seek Jesus. This is my first point. When your world falls apart, seek Jesus. There is no more important piece of advice for any situation, especially when you're hurting. Seek Jesus. Go where Jesus is. Sit there. Cry if you want to. He doesn't mind. Just be patient. Persist. Wait there. Mary went to the tomb and she waited. She didn't know what she was waiting for. She probably wasn't even sure that there was anything left to wait for. She just wanted to be near him. Even after she saw his body had gone, she stayed and she waited and she wept. Healing your hurt starts with Jesus. Seek him. Go looking for him. Go to the places where you will find him. In church, in prayers, in the Bible, in song, in the company of other people who follow Jesus. Your hurt may not be healed straight away. What comes next may not look like what you'd previously hoped for or imagined. You may be carrying your grief for some time yet, but that's okay. Jesus can share that load. Seek Jesus. You have to be an active participant in this. Jesus is a person, and this is a relationship. The second thing is respond to his call. When your world falls apart, respond to his call. When Jesus appeared to Mary, he spoke to her, but she didn't recognize him. She only recognized him when he called her by her name, Mary. What you don't get from reading the Bible is the way that Jesus said it, the tone that he used when he spoke that word, when he said her name. Did he mean, "Mary, snap out of it. Don't you recognize me? Don't you remember who I am? Don't you even understand everything that I told you? Don't you trust me?" Possibly that was what he meant. And maybe there was a hint of that. It wouldn't be entirely out of character for Jesus to have that touch of scolding. But we can convey a lot of complex feelings in how we say a single word. And more than any undertone of chiding, I think Jesus said her name as an invitation. Mary, why are you weeping? Let me comfort you. Let me heal you. Let me show you that there is life on the other side of your grief. Jesus calls you by name too. It's an invitation for anyone who is seeking him, whoever is sad, broken, or mourning, whoever needs healing, whoever needs love. He's calling you. But to do what? Thirdly, let Jesus guide what comes next. When your world falls apart, let Jesus guide whatever comes next. After Mary eventually recognizes Jesus, he says quite a strange thing to her. Don't cling to me. Now, he doesn't mean don't touch me. He wasn't a ghost and, like her hand would pass through him. A few days later, he let Thomas poke around in the holes of his hand where he'd been crucified. Jesus meant something quite different. He was something quite different to what he was before. He was still the Jesus that Mary knew, but he was also this new creation, and he would shortly be ascending. Jesus was saying to Mary, don't cling to the old life and the old dream. Their relationship wouldn't be like it was before. Something new would follow. Don't cling to how you thought life was going to be. Let Jesus guide whatever comes next. Just stick close to him. It might not be what you imagined. It probably won't be. No one can take away the loss that you've already felt. And no one's promising that. It might seem scary, but this is something new. Something from God. This is a future where you walk with Jesus, where you're open to him, where you're in submission to his guidance and wisdom. Recently, Hui and I were putting our son Samuel to bed. He was in a great mood. He's just joyful and singing and making us laugh as we put him down in bed. And just in that moment, it struck me really intensely how much my dad would have loved Samuel and how much Samuel would have loved my dad. Dad would have loved visiting us in Harrogate and spending time with us. He would have loved Hui. And he would have loved to see me as I am now. So I sat with Hui afterwards and I just cried on her shoulder because grief, it never completely disappears. Over time, it just comes to the surface a little bit less often. And as I cried, I reflected on how much my dad's passing had changed my life. Shortly after he passed, I chose to leave Edinburgh, where I was living at the time, and move closer to home. I left behind friends, familiarity, a career, a home, and I moved. I landed in Harrogate, where I knew no one, and I started to work in Leeds, where I also knew no one. But here, I found new life. I found Jesus. I found my wife. I found a new home. And I found our son. My life that I cried about my dad missing out on is a life that wouldn't have existed had he not passed. And I've spent a lot of time trying to process that. And I can't be certain about how my life would have turned out if things had happened differently. It's just too unknowable. But what I can be certain of are the facts that in this new place, I sought Jesus, eventually. And I responded to his call, eventually. And I let him guide what came next. It didn't happen straight away. There was waiting, and there was certainly weeping. But there was also Jesus. And I can honestly say that for all the moments of heartache along the way, I wouldn't change anything. Because what I have is a life of happiness, filled with blessings. You see, there is joy on the other side of grief. It's not one or the other. Any family that has laughed through the tears while fondly remembering a loved one knows that that's true. There's not a time limit on it either. For Mary Magdalene, it took 3 days. For me, years. My word for you is what I've already said. Seek Jesus, respond to his call, and let him guide whatever comes next. See, there is new life, but it probably won't look like what you previously imagined. But if it's got the hand of Jesus on it, it will be good. Let's pray together now. Sadly, I doubt there's anyone who escapes those world falling apart moments. It's not about your moment being worse than my moment or my moment being worse than yours. We're not trying to compare, and there's no bar of materiality for these moments. Pain is pain. But I've got good news for you. You are doing great on step one. If you're listening to this, you've already started seeking Jesus. Pray this prayer with me, and let's keep going on that journey. Jesus, help me to continue to seek you. Help me to find you in your church, in prayers, in the Bible, in song, and in the company of other people who follow you. I hear you calling me by name. This is my response. I need your healing. Today, I accept your love for me. Help me, Jesus, to submit to you, to walk with you, to learn your ways, and let you guide me in whatever you have planned for my life. If you prayed that prayer and you want to continue to seek Jesus and make a commitment to follow him, then wherever you are, raise your hand, send us an email, or get in touch via our website. Partly that's for you, and as a symbolic act to mark this moment, as the moment that you said yes to following Jesus. But partly it's also for me and the rest of the team here at C3 Yorks, so that we can pray with you, or cry with you, have a cup of tea with you, or maybe just sit in silence with you. We're not strangers anymore. All of us together are members of God's household. We're family. With Jesus, there is new life, and we declare peace and freedom and joyful days ahead. Amen.
When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is a mountain, you see a mountain move. And as I walk through the shadows, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight on my knees, with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet, and I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are falling, you can be against me. For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When will I see all the Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. In almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. In almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadow, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I fight on my knees. When my hands lifted high, know that the battle belongs to you. Everything I lay at your feet, and I'll sing through the night. Know that the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you.
Thank you, Alex, for being so honest and sharing your journey with us. And I'm sure many of you may have similar stories. If you would like prayer or you want to share your story of how God has helped you through a difficult season, then please do get in touch with us. Head to c3yorks.church/connect and let us know. Also, don't forget to hit subscribe on our channel so that you'll get notified whenever we post new content. And if you'd like to support the work that we do here as a church or bring a tithe and offering as an act of worship, then you can do that right now. All the details that you need are up on your screens in front of you. Thanks for watching today, and I hope that we will see you again really soon. God bless and have a great week.